Hello ladies and gentlemen, today's episode focuses on the LaserDisc technology. The LaserDisc LD was an optical disc storage format, primarily used for video and audio. It was one of the first home video formats to use laser technology for reading and writing data. LaserDiscs were a precursor to modern DVD discs and Blu-rays, but unlike these formats, they were analog rather than digital. Development and invention. The LaserDisc was developed by Pioneer Electronics in the late 1970s. Although the idea itself was a collaboration between JVC Japan Victor Company and Pioneer. It was invented by James T. Russell, a researcher who was awarded a patent for the technology in the early 1970s. Russell's invention used a laser to read an optical disc, similar to how a record player uses a stylus to read grooves on a vinyl record. However, the LaserDisc took the concept further, allowing it to store both video and audio information. The first commercial LaserDisc player was released in 1978 by Pioneer in Japan. The first commercially available LaserDisc titles were introduced around the same time. History and background. The LaserDisc format was primarily marketed as a high-quality video solution for home viewing. At the time, VHS and Betamax were dominating the home video market. But LaserDiscs offered superior picture and sound quality, making them popular among videophiles. However, the format was expensive, and the discs themselves were bulky, typically around 12 inches in diameter, much larger than VHS tapes. LaserDiscs were used for movies, music videos, and educational content. The video quality was better than VHS, and the audio quality was comparable to CD-disc digital audio, which was a significant selling point for audiophiles and home theater enthusiasts. Different types of LaserDiscs and storage capacity. LaserDiscs came into primary formats. 1. CLV constant linear velocity. These were the most common LaserDiscs, which played video at a constant speed, with the number of bits per inch of the disc decreasing as the radius of the disc increased. CLV discs typically held about 60 minutes of video per side, or 120 minutes for a double-sided disc. 2. CAV constant angular velocity. These discs were used for high-quality video and special applications like interactive video and video games. The CAV format allowed for frame-accurate seeking and paused frames, making it ideal for video editing and other specialized uses. However, they had a lower storage capacity, typically 30 minutes per side. LaserDiscs could hold up to 3.6 gigabytes of data on a double-sided, dual-layer disc in their highest quality, but because they were analog, their video quality still lagged behind digital formats like DVD. The first movie released on LaserDisc. The first movie to be released on LaserDisc was Jaws 1975. This film became the first to be released in the format in 1978, marking the LaserDisc's entry into the home entertainment market. Other early releases followed, including popular movies such as Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. The LaserDisc became especially popular among collectors due to the superior audio and visual quality it provided, as well as its ability to include special features, which VHS couldn't offer at the time. Duration of the LaserDisc era. The LaserDisc format was popular from the late 1970s to the mid-1990s. Although it never achieved mass-market adoption due to its high cost, the large size of the discs, and the growing popularity of VHS and, later, DVD discs. By the early 2000s, LaserDiscs were effectively replaced by DVD discs, which offered more convenience and digital quality. The last LaserDisc titles were released around 2001 in Japan, marking the end of the format's commercial life. Despite this, a niche group of collectors and enthusiasts continue to preserve and enjoy LaserDiscs today. LaserDisc players and functions. LaserDisc players were relatively large and expensive for their time, with early models costing several $100s over time. However, the technology improved and more features were added. Common features of LaserDisc players included: 1. Dual-side playback. Many players allowed users to flip the disc manually in the case of CLV discs, or automatically in the case of higher-end models. 2. Audio and video quality. LaserDisc players provided superior video quality compared to VHS, with many supporting stereo audio or even Dolby surround sound. High-end players supported component video outputs and S-video connections for enhanced video clarity. 3. Search and skip functions. Some LaserDisc players had the ability to skip directly to specific scenes, but not as easily as modern DVD players. 4. Freeze frame and slow motion. High-end models supported frame-by-frame playback and slow-motion functions for better control over the video. Companies that made LaserDiscs and players. The major company responsible for the development and manufacturing of LaserDiscs was Pioneer Electronics. Pioneer not only developed the LaserDisc format, but was also the dominant manufacturer of LaserDisc players throughout the format's lifespan. Other companies that made LaserDiscs and players include Sony, made some LaserDisc players and was a significant contributor to the development of related technologies. JVC played a key role in the development of the format, but was more prominent in the VHS market. Philips was involved in the optical disc development and contributed to the overall technology behind LaserDiscs. Matsushita, Panasonic, also made LaserDisc players, contributing to the market's growth in Japan. In addition to these manufacturers, some of the major movie studios also supported the LaserDisc format, including MGM, Universal, and Warner Brothers, which released films in the LaserDisc format during the 1980s and 1990s. Video games were released on LaserDisc, and the format was actually used for some early interactive video games and arcade-style games in the 1980s. These games were not traditional video games in the sense of modern consoles, but more of a hybrid between interactive movies and arcade games. LaserDisc video games. LaserDiscs were used in video games primarily for their ability to store large amounts of video and audio data. The large storage capacity of a LaserDisc compared to a standard arcade ROM, which was limited in size, allowed for much more elaborate full-motion video, FMV sequences, and live-action content. These games were often designed with real-time choices that affected the story or gameplay, providing an interactive experience similar to that of a movie. Players would make decisions during gameplay, with the LaserDisc holding the necessary video for different outcomes. Here are some notable video games released on LaserDisc. 1. Dragon's Lair 1983. Developer, Rick Dyer, and Don Bluth and Animation Studio. Platform, arcade. Description: Dragon's Lair was one of the most famous LaserDisc-based arcade games. It used animation and full-motion video, with players controlling a knight named Dirk the Daring. He navigates a castle to rescue a princess. The game was interactive in that players had to press the correct buttons at the right times to make decisions during quick-time events, with each incorrect choice leading to a different failure sequence. The game was revolutionary at the time due to its high-quality animated graphics and cinematic appeal. It was created by Don Bluth, the former Disney animator, and was one of the first arcade games to use LaserDisc technology. 2. Space Ace 1983. Developer, Don Bluth and Rick Dyer. Platform, arcade. Description: Like Dragon's Lair, Space Ace was another LaserDisc game that used animated full-motion video. The game's plot revolved around a space hero named Ace, who must save a galaxy from the evil villain Borf. The player would control Ace as he navigates through various challenges, with their actions affecting the storyline. Similar to Dragon's Lair, the gameplay involved selecting actions at specific times based on on-screen prompts. It was another milestone in the use of interactive animation for video games. 3. Cliffhanger 1983. Developer, Sega. Platform, arcade. Description: Another LaserDisc-based game. Cliffhanger combined footage from popular Japanese animated TV series, such as Lupin III and The Castle of Cagliostro. The game featured scenes from these cartoons, and players would control a character who engaged in various action scenes. The video was stored on the LaserDisc, and players would have to react to on-screen prompts to control the action. 4. Astron Belt 1983. Developer, Sega. Platform, arcade. Description: Astron Belt was a space shooter and one of the first arcade games to combine 3D wireframe graphics with LaserDisc video. The game had the player control a spaceship while engaging in space combat against enemy ships. The game used the LaserDisc for the full-motion video sequences, and the gameplay was more traditional than that of Dragon's Lair, but still took advantage of the high-quality video provided by the format. 5. The Legend of Hirotama 1985. Developer, Taito. Platform, arcade. Description: A lesser-known LaserDisc arcade game that involved side-scrolling action. This game combined live-action video with traditional gameplay mechanics. 6. Time Traveler 1991. Developer, Sega. Platform, arcade. Description: Time Traveler was one of the last LaserDisc-based arcade games. It used stereoscopic 3D effects, along with full-motion video, to create an immersive experience. The player traveled through different time periods, and the game included a number of puzzle-solving elements and action sequences. These LaserDisc games were typically played on special arcade machines that used a LaserDisc player inside the machine to read the disc and display the video. The gameplay itself was controlled using joysticks and buttons, which would trigger specific video segments from the LaserDisc, allowing the player to interact with the story. #arcade machines. LaserDisc-based games required a LaserDisc player integrated into the arcade machine. The arcade cabinet would have a screen to display the video, while players interacted using buttons or a joystick to make decisions or perform actions. These machines had to be powerful enough to handle full-motion video (FMV), which was a major technological achievement at the time. Home versions of LaserDisc games. Some of the LaserDisc-based games were also ported to home consoles and LaserDisc players, but these home versions were not as widespread or as polished as the arcade originals. Some home consoles like the Pioneer LaserActive released in the early 1990s could play LaserDisc games, but the games were more expensive, and the overall market for LaserDisc gaming in the home was limited. Notable LaserDisc gaming systems: 1. Pioneer LaserActive 1993. A LaserDisc-based console that could play both LaserDiscs for movies and special LaserDisc games. It was capable of supporting games like the Infernal Machine and others, although it was not widely adopted and was expensive. 2. Philips CDI. This system was not fully a LaserDisc player, but it played interactive CD-based games, and there was some overlap in the interactive movie genre between the CDI and LaserDisc systems. Some LaserDisc-based titles were adapted for the CDI. Legacy of LaserDisc games. While LaserDisc video games were innovative and groundbreaking at the time, they had several drawbacks that limited their long-term success. Limited interactivity. Unlike modern video games, LaserDisc games often lacked the depth and fluidity of action, as the player was often just choosing between options at predetermined moments. High cost. The cost of LaserDisc players and the arcade machines using them was high, and LaserDiscs themselves were relatively expensive to manufacture. Despite these drawbacks, LaserDisc gaming remains an important milestone in the history of interactive media. The use of full-motion video and branching narratives influenced later developments in FMV games like the Wing Commander series and interactive movie games in the 1990s, though LaserDisc video games were a niche format. They helped lay the groundwork for the types of multimedia experiences that would later become more widely available with the rise of C-Disc, DVD-Disc, and digital gaming technologies. Conclusion: the LaserDisc was a pioneering format in the history of home video entertainment, offering superior video and audio quality for its time. Despite its failure to gain widespread adoption, it paved the way for future advancements in optical disc technology, such as DVD-Disc and Blu-rays. The format's legacy lives on in the high-quality video and audio features we now take for granted in modern media formats. Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. If you want more content like this, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. Until next time, may legends be born.